Well, it's nice to be able to the time to enjoy nature when we've all slowed down because of the pandemic. But these days, unfortunately, come with increased chances that you need to express your sympathy to friends or family members.
Yeah, maybe it's for the loss of a job, the loss of a business, or the loss of a loved one to COVID. Or maybe because of COVID, you can't even attend a funeral to express your sympathy in person.
That has us wondering how to write a good condolence note. It's kind of a lost art, but more meaningful now as a way to connect with others at a time when we feel so disconnected.
And that's why we are calling in our favorite manners expert for some advice on all of this. Welcome Liz Aquino of the Good Manners Group. And thank you for joining us, Liz.
Thank you for having me. It's such an important topic.
It really is.
Oftentimes, when it comes to writing a condolence letter, it's common to get paralyzed by the fear of saying the wrong thing or just not knowing what to say. So I'm going to give you 4 simple steps to writing a good condolence letter to someone who's grieving the loss of a loved one. The first sentence is going to be your expression of sympathy. And in that sentence, make sure to include the deceased person's name. For example, my first sentence might sound like, "I'm so sorry to hear that Betty passed away last weekend." In the second sentence, bring up a good quality of the deceased person. So back to my example, Betty was always so hospitable, welcoming anybody who came to visit her. In the third sentence, include a nice memory you have of the deceased person. For example, my husband Tony and I went to visit Betty, and she greeted us at the door with a plate of her famous chocolate chip cookies, and her smile just lit up the room. And finally, conclude the letter with an offer to help. And not a generic offer like, "Call me if you need anything." That puts the burden on the grieving person. Instead, make it a specific offer for help. Like, "I'd love to come over next week and bring you dinner." Or, "Can Tony come and mow your lawn over the weekend?" And then finally close the letter in a very personal way with an active thought. Remember, this letter is for the living, not the deceased.
Right.
You want that person to know that you're going to continually be in their life. This is not the end. So instead of the one-word closing like sincerely or love or fondly, say something like, "I'll always be here to support you," or "You're in my thoughts," and then sign your name.
Liz, such good guidance. Now, what about, we've heard a lot about job losses and some businesses closing up. So what if you want to send a note to someone who's in that situation?
Right, that's a great question. And this letter is really just 3 sentences, but in those 3 sentences, you have to strike a balance between sympathy for the job loss and optimism for the future. So your first sentence will be your expression of sympathy again. For example, "I'm sorry to hear that you no longer work at Silvis Insurance Company." Notice I'm not saying why they're not working there. I'm not saying the word "you were fired" or "laid off" or "the business closed." I'm simply expressing my sympathy. In the second sentence, I'll offer my help. "Let's meet next week so we can talk about how I can help you through this transition," whether it be networking or just listening to you talk about your future goals. And then finally, the third sentence is where you're going to give your little boost of hope. So best wishes as you continue on to the next stage in your career.
That all great advice. Let's talk about like when to send it and how to send it, because one thing I have wondered before, is it ever too late to send it? Maybe you didn't hear about whatever happened until a little bit later on. And also, Liz, in this day and age, is it ever okay to email someone, or does it need to be an actual card?
Right. First of all, it's never too late to send that sympathy note. It's better to send it promptly within about a week of finding out about the tragedy. But if you hear about someone dying and it's 2 months later, sometimes that is the exact moment when the person who is grieving feels most alone, like the world has moved on without them. So it's still really important to get that letter in the mail. And notice I'm saying in the mail. I think that it's important to mail it rather than email it. If you're visiting a funeral home and they have a basket where you can put sympathy cards, that's fine too. But really try to get it into the mail. It becomes increasingly rare to get a handwritten note, so that makes it even more meaningful and special to get one.
Liz, I've thought about this myself in writing condolence notes. Why is it that people are so afraid of saying the wrong thing? I mean, I think people are always accepting of getting a note, but I find myself, does this sound okay? Should I write this?
Right, right. And some people will try to dance around the word death or passed away. The person receiving your note knows what happens, and it becomes cumbersome to try to talk around it. So just use the voice that you would when you're talking to them. But yeah, it's really common. We don't have much experience really of grieving with someone because we're usually there for the happy times, and oftentimes people grieve alone. So we kind of have to get over that fear, and hopefully these steps with our simple sentences will help you do that.
Yeah, it's so important just to let people know you're thinking about them.
That you-
So thank you
Absolutely.
so much, Liz. We appreciate you joining
My
us for
pleasure.
this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, Liz Aquino of the Good Manners Group, thank her very much. And we'll have her contact information available at pittsburghtodaylive.com.